Welcome to this video tutorial with Virtual Racing School for the GTE class of the IMSA Sports Car Championship on iRacing. This week we're at the brilliant Suzuka circuit in Japan, where I'll be looking at a lap by Rens Broekman with the Ferrari 488 GTE, for which he has driven in default morning weather to match the official series. I'll play the lap in full for you first before then going into further analysis. Okay, so that was a 1 minute 55.540. Okay, so from the VRS website then, you'll be wanting to select the Ferrari IMSA data pack as driven by Rens Broekman and choose the first week, which is Suzuka circuit. It will load up the session details where you can download the lap files, a replay, and of course the race setup. I'm just going to click on Learn Track to load up the driving analyzer, and it will start to play the lap through. I've already slowed it down to half speed and I've also muted it, but I'm just going to pause it as well. And if you're unfamiliar with this, basically you've got a bunch of telemetry overlays. So you've got a steering angle inputs trace, speed trace through the duration of the lap, brake and throttle input traces, and some live driving inputs as well. So to start off, I'm going to jump straight to the sequence of turn 1 and turn 2, where obviously you need to be over to the left hand side of the circuit to set the car up for the braking zone. I'm just going to switch to chase view so we can more carefully see where Rens is hitting the brakes. It's just before this access road here, well before the 50 marker. Now turn 1 and 2, you basically treat it like a double apex. So notice how Rens is on the brakes fairly gently initially, but then holds that brake pressure for quite some time and kind of releases the brake really gradually and kind of holds it. So that way he's keeping the front end loaded up, keeping the car rotating and avoiding getting understeer as he enters the corner. So you want to turn in quite early, aiming for that early apex, hooking up with this first curb, get close to it but don't hit it, and then you should have enough entry speed that the car will continue to sort of wash out wide. That's what you want, because what that will do, and you see that Rens comes out towards this outside curb. You don't want to go too wide and step onto the AstroTurf, but if you are nice and wide in the middle, it will set you up for a nice wide entry into turn 2, which is what you want. And notice Rens is still braking, so that's very important. So he keeps the car rotating, is able to carry a decent amount of entry speed as a result of braking for such a sustained period, and then he's finally about to hook up with a very late apex, has picked up the throttle really aggressively initially, and then is kind of feathering as he's unsure, I guess, about how the car might react on that curb. You can see the car's moving just a little bit, and then reaching full throttle in second gear as well at this point. So we've had a few downshifts in that braking phase, and he's allowed the car to run out all the way to this exit curb where he's just running along the edge of it there. And then we go into the high speed S curves, the S's, which is probably the most iconic feature of this circuit. So we'll play that through. So basically it's just a matter of compromise. Each corner leads into another corner, but to start things off you want to bring the car fully over to the right hand edge of the circuit to give yourself a nice wide entry and allow you to carry as much speed in as possible. And we can see on entry here that Rens, again, just barely breathing on the brake pedal. One thing that I didn't mention earlier is this car does not have ABS, so unlike the GT3 cars, you really have to be quite precise with how you release the brake. So you saw that in turn 1, how carefully Rens was braking. He didn't brake very hard, and he came off and bled off nicely as he turned in, and that will be a feature throughout this lap, and I'll explain in more detail later on. But here we can see Rens is again holding those brakes all the way into the apex, picking up the throttle at the apex quite aggressively initially, but then doesn't commit to 100%. So don't rush to 100% throttle. He's basically right on the edge of traction anyway, and if he applies any more throttle, he's relying on the traction control to save the car basically, and to keep the car stable, which is not really what you want. So into turn 4 then, again just a small breathe on the brakes, get the car tucked in, get the nose in. Very important to get your line right through these S's, or at least to carry the line of least resistance. So you want to try and kiss every single curb through this sequence, and as we play it through, he's back on the power again, being patient, only now reaching full throttle, and hasn't used all of the track on the exit because he wants to set the car up for a reasonable entry. Again, it's all a compromise. Breathing on the brakes again briefly, back on the throttle at the apex, not rushing to full throttle so he can keep a tight line and not wash out too wide, which will compromise his entry into 6, sorry. But again, through this longer right-hander, he's breathing on the brakes, just trailing the brakes all the way through here, keeping the front end loaded up and just helping the car rotate and reducing understeer. And it's super important on the exit here that you keep the car tight. So he's again picking up the throttle fast initially and then patiently holding it and waiting, because he doesn't want to overcommit and run too wide at the exit of this corner, because then he won't be able to position the car nicely for the entry up the hill into turn 7, which we see here again. He's pretty close to the edge of the circuit, which opens up the entry nicely. And no need to brake up here, but you do need a full lift. If you just kind of feather out of the throttle, you'll find the car won't rotate so well. But by abruptly lifting off the throttle like this, Rens has good rotation. And you can see that again, picking up the throttle as he apexes, getting close to this curb. Ideally, you don't want to use too much of this curb because it might destabilize the car up the hill, and the car has a tendency to go light up the hill as well. Allow the car to use all of the track on the exit, just be wary of running too wide onto the grass there and there as well. And then bring the car completely flat out now, up a few gears, keep the car tight up the left-hander towards the first and faster of the two Degners. So we'll go to turn 8 and 9 for this and play it through. You're spotting this 50 meter marker basically. That's going to be a reference that you'll use. So you'll have the 100 marker, you'll have the 50 meter marker. Basically you want to brake roughly halfway in between those two. So again, don't brake too aggressively, you risk locking up wheels. It's quite a high speed corner, so you don't need to brake so hard. And as soon as you start turning in, you need to be bleeding off those brakes, but never fully letting go again. So Rens doesn't let go of the brakes, keeps the front end loaded up, avoids the understeer, and hooks up with this curb Now the car does have a tendency to sometimes react quite badly off that curb, which it does in this situation. So you can see again Rens picks up the throttle nice and early but doesn't overcommit, and is holding at about 90% there until the car has settled and he's sure of not running wide of this curb on the exit. Now there's a bit of AstroTurf here which you don't want to run onto. Rens just about gets away with that before he hits the brakes again. And if you need a reference, there is a patch of grass there just wide of the AstroTurf which you can use as a braking reference for the second Degner. And again, can't afford to brake too hard. You're on the curb, the tyres don't have the most grip on the curb, so you can't afford to brake too hard, especially as you turn in, which is just going to be at the end of the curb. You can see that Rens bleeds off the brakes as he turns in, and that way he's avoiding the risk of locking up, but again doesn't let go of the brake completely. So you're going to see patterns in the way that Rens drives the car to get the most out of the car. And again at the apex picks up the throttle. You want to make sure that you hit that apex. That's quite important because the circuit is quite cambered near the apex. You want to take advantage of that and get in quite low. You want to turn in fairly early as well and pick up the throttle hard. Again, just a small feather just to ensure that he's not going to run wide on this AstroTurf on the exit there. Up the hill then for the run through the right hand kink into the hairpin. Now you'll see when I go to the next sector here how tight Rens keeps it in to this curb, but then more importantly how early and how gently he brakes. So he's not leaving his braking too late, and he's braking super gently. And again, you will lock the wheels up if you brake too hard whilst you're turning in through this first kink. So as the car straightens up, he's able to increase braking pressure, and he does this in a very nice, smooth and progressive fashion. Keeps the car in the straight line, allows him to brake quite hard, about 50 or 60% is threshold. And then as he turns in all the way down in first gear now, he progressively bleeds off, and he's actually quite tight here, so I suspect that's why he's coasting at this point. Eventually picks up the throttle as the car tightens up, and then all the way down in first gear, so there's a lot of torque at the rear wheels, so it doesn't overcommit on the throttle, picks it up to about 60% straight away, and then hesitates, modulates, gets the car straight, and then finally commits to full throttle, again using all of the track on the exit. We go through the right-hander of 12 now, 11 and 12. I'll basically skip through here, but it's just or I'll speed it up to normal speed, but you just want to keep the car nice and tight, allow the car out wide in the middle, and then retighten again so that you are well positioned for braking into spoon, which is going to be 13 and then 14. And we'll play this through. I'll just slow it down to half speed again. You have another reference here, you've got this access road. Just take it back and show you chase view. So braking for Rens is significantly before the access road, but that's basically a reference that you can use to judge. And then as he's turning in, he's bleeding off the brake, same story as usual, bleeds off the brake but doesn't fully let go, hooks up with this first apex. It's a double apex again, similar to turn 1, but there's a little bit more track in between the two corners, enough to which Rens is able to take advantage of by getting back in the throttle. The circuit opens up, run the car out to this exit curb. Important that you don't overstep that, but it's also important that you do use all of the track there to open turn 14 up nicely, which Rens does, and picks up the throttle fairly late there actually, because he doesn't want to run wide. It's quite a long corner spoon. It's certainly more than 90 degrees, and again he picks up the throttle quite aggressively but then modulates and feathers. The rear traction is quite limited through here because the circuit drops down the hill, and then he's basically timing it to the point where he knows he doesn't have to lift off again, and using all of the curb and all of the track on the exit. So we'll go to 130R now and play this through. Your braking reference here is going to be this 50-meter marker, and again a very gentle braking zone. So Rens is peaking at about 20% brake pressure there, just tucking the nose in, getting the car turned and rotated. It's a very fast corner down into 5th gear, and then as soon as he hits the apex curb there, which is quite important that you do get your line right so you don't run too wide, he picks up the throttle. And again, doesn't rush straight to 100% throttle, picks it up initially quickly and then progressively increases to 100% throttle. As we head into the final chicane now, this is 16 and 17, going to be braking in between the 150-meter marker and the 100-meter marker. And again, threshold braking in this car is about 50 to 60%. You don't want to lock up, keep the car in a straight line. You should finish your braking right at the edge of the circuit, don't turn in too early, very important, all the way down into 1st gear, and then bleeding off those brakes, but never fully letting go. You want to hook up with this first curb through the inside, briefly back on the throttle, but not too much, don't overcommit. Keep the car quite tight through the middle there, before then bringing the car back over, using a bit less of this curb through the left. It's a little bit more aggressive, and you want to keep the car nice and stable and the rear end nice and planted, so you can get back on the power and straighten the car up and keep it nice and stable for the best traction. Allow the car to run out. You don't want to overdo it. You want to keep the car as tight as possible within the means of traction that the car has, before then finishing the lap. You can find all setups, replays and telemetry for your own use and analysis on virtualracingschool.com, where you can also book one-on-one tuition with world champions from the likes of Coanda Simsport. Good luck for this week, and feel free to post any questions or comments below. Thanks for watching.